Hello there, and welcome. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Perhaps you've been gazing at the stars, wondering what ancient peoples knew that we've forgotten. Or maybe you simply enjoy drifting to sleep with stories that connect earth and sky, past and present, mystery and meaning. Whatever brought you here, you're in the right place. Tonight, we're traveling to the heart of West Africa, to the Bandiagara Escarpment in Mali, where a people called the Dogon have preserved astronomical knowledge that seems impossible for them to have possessed. Knowledge about a star system invisible to the naked eye, passed down through generations in ritual, dance, and sacred story. So let your breathing slow, your body settle into rest, and your thoughts drift upward like smoke rising toward the night sky. This journey will be calm and curious, filled with the soft rhythms of drums, the gentle wisdom of elders, and the timeless dance of stars wheeling overhead. And if these stories bring you peace, consider subscribing, leaving a like, and sharing which city you're listening from in the comments. It helps others find these gentle tales, one sleepy soul at a time. Now, close your eyes, and let's begin our journey beneath African skies. In the night sky, there is a star so bright it has captured human attention since the beginning of recorded history. The ancient Egyptians called it Sopdet and built their calendar around its rising. When Sirius rose just before dawn in midsummer, it signaled the coming of the Nile's annual flood, the event that made Egyptian civilization possible. They associated it with Isis, the great mother goddess, and built temples aligned to its rising. The Greeks called it Sirius and said it marked the nose of the great dog that followed Orion the hunter across the heavens. They noticed that when Sirius rose with the sun in late summer, the weather became oppressively hot and people often fell ill. The Romans blamed it for the hot, oppressive days of late summer, calling them the dog days, when Sirius rose with the sun, believing the star added its heat to the suns. Across cultures, Sirius has been significant. The Polynesians used it for navigation, calling it the night navigator. Chinese astronomers tracked its movements carefully. In India, it was associated with the arrow of Rudra, the storm god. Everywhere humans looked up, Sirius commanded attention. Sirius is the brightest star in our night sky. A brilliant diamond hanging low on the horizon during winter months in the northern hemisphere. It's actually quite close to us in cosmic terms, just 8.6 light years away, and it's incredibly luminous, about 25 times brighter than our own sun. Its apparent brightness is due to both its intrinsic luminosity and its proximity. Among naked-eye stars, only a handful are closer. But here's what makes Sirius truly remarkable. It's not alone. Sirius has a companion, a tiny, incredibly dense star called Sirius B, orbiting around their common center of gravity every 50 years. Sirius B is what astronomers call a white dwarf, the collapsed core of a once massive star that has exhausted its nuclear fuel. It's only about the size of Earth, but contains roughly the mass of our Sun, making it so dense that a teaspoon of its material would weigh several tons on Earth. There's just one problem. Sirius B is invisible to the naked eye. It wasn't discovered by Western astronomers until 1862, when American astronomer Alvin Graham Clark spotted it while testing a new telescope. It wasn't successfully photographed until 1970, when technology had advanced enough to capture its faint light, separated from the overwhelming glare of Sirius A. And yet, deep in the heart of West Africa, a people called the Dogon have been telling stories about Sirius and its invisible companion for centuries, perhaps millennia. How did they know? This is the mystery that has puzzled astronomers, anthropologists, and anyone who loves a good cosmic enigma. Tonight, we'll explore this mystery gently, without rushing toward conclusions, letting the story unfold like the petals of a night-blooming flower. The Dogon people live in Mali, in a region called the Bandiagara Escarpment, a stunning landscape of sandstone cliffs, caves, and plateaus that stretches for about 150 kilometers along a fault line. They've inhabited this region for at least 600 years, though their oral traditions suggest they've been there much longer, having migrated from the Manda Highlands to escape the spread of Islam and to preserve their traditional beliefs and practices. The landscape itself is dramatic and beautiful. Tall cliffs of red and gold sandstone rise abruptly from the plain below, their faces dotted with ancient granaries and burial caves carved into the rock hundreds of feet above the ground. Villages cling to the cliff sides or nestle at their base. Clusters of clay buildings with distinctive pointed roofs made from millet stalks. The architecture is organic, grown from the earth itself, blending seamlessly with the landscape. Baobab trees, those ancient giants with trunks like elephants' feet and branches that look like roots reaching toward the sky, stand scattered across the landscape. Some of them are hundreds, even thousands of years old, hollow inside, serving as meeting places, water storage, or even small shrines. During the dry season, the landscape is harsh and brown, but when the rains come, it transforms into green terraces and gardens. The Dogon are farmers, primarily, growing millet, sorghum, and onions on small terraced fields carved into the hillsides through generations of labor. Water is precious here, collected during the brief rainy season and carefully managed throughout the dry months. Every village has its water source, often a spring or well that's considered sacred, protected by rituals and taboos. They're also skilled craftspeople, creating intricate wooden masks and sculptures for their ceremonies. These masks are not just art objects, but sacred items, embodying the spirits they represent. Each mask has its own character, its own dance, its own role in the ceremonial cycle. Some masks are so sacred that only initiated men can see them, and they're kept hidden in caves between ceremonies. The Dogon create beautiful textiles as well, using locally grown cotton dyed with indigo and other natural pigments. The traditional indigo cloth, deep blue and patterned with white designs, is prized throughout West Africa. Women weave narrow strips on portable looms, which are then sewn together to create larger cloths. But what makes the Dogon truly distinctive is their rich cosmology, their complex system of beliefs about the universe, creation, and humanity's place within it. This cosmology is preserved and transmitted through ritual, through art, through oral tradition passed from elders to initiates, from generation to generation. Dogon society is organized around this cosmological knowledge. There are priests called Hogon, who are responsible for maintaining the sacred traditions and conducting important rituals. There are blacksmiths who hold special status because they work with fire and metal, transforming matter through their craft in ways that echo the creative acts of the gods. There are hunters, farmers, weavers, each with their role in the social fabric, all connected to the larger cosmological order. Knowledge in Dogon culture is not freely shared. It's revealed gradually, in stages, as individuals prove themselves worthy and capable of understanding deeper truths. Young men undergo initiation ceremonies that can last for months, during which they learn the stories, the songs, the sacred symbols. Each level of initiation brings access to more profound knowledge, more complex understandings of the cosmos. At the heart of Dogon cosmology is Amma, the creator god, and the Nommo, ancestral spirits who came from the sky to bring civilization and knowledge to humanity. And central to their understanding of the cosmos is detailed knowledge about Sirius, which they call Potolo, the seed star. In the 1930s and 1940s, two French anthropologists, Marcel Griol and Germain Dieterlen, lived among the Dogon, learning their language, participating in their ceremonies, and being gradually initiated into deeper levels of their cosmological knowledge. Griol, in particular, spent years building relationships, earning trust, demonstrating his seriousness and respect for Dogon culture. His breakthrough came when he befriended a blind Dogon elder named Ogotemeli, a highly respected sage and teacher. Over 33 days, Ogotemeli revealed to Griol the fundamental principles of Dogon cosmology, teaching him the way one teaches a student, carefully, methodically, building from simple concepts to more complex ones. These conversations formed the basis of Griol's book, Conversations with Ogotemeli, published in 1948. What Griol and Dieterlen discovered was astonishing. The Dogon told them that Potolo, Sirius, has a companion star. This companion, they said, is very small, but incredibly heavy, heavier than all the iron on Earth. They said it's invisible to the human eye. It takes 50 years to complete one orbit around Sirius. They even described the orbit as elliptical, not circular, and could draw diagrams in the sand showing the path of this invisible star around its visible companion. All of this is accurate. Sirius B is indeed small compared to most stars, only about 12,000 kilometers in diameter, roughly the size of Earth. But it's incredibly dense, with matter so compressed that it weighs about 1,000,000 times more than an equal volume of water. It is invisible to the naked eye, requiring powerful telescopes to detect. And it does take approximately 50 years to orbit Sirius A in an elliptical path. Griol and Dieterlen published their findings in 1950 in a dense scholarly article in the Journal de la Société des Africanistes. The article, titled Un système soudanais de Sirius, was written in French, heavily academic, and didn't attract much attention outside specialist circles at first. But in the 1970s, the mystery exploded into popular consciousness, particularly after writer Robert Temple published a book called The Sirius Mystery, suggesting that the Dogon's knowledge came from extraterrestrial visitors who arrived from the Sirius system thousands of years ago, possibly the same gods that ancient Egyptians, Sumerians, and other early civilizations encountered. Temple's book was controversial, criticized by many scientists and anthropologists, but embraced by those interested in ancient astronaut theories. The story took on a life of its own, spreading through books, documentaries, television shows, and internet discussions. The Dogon became famous, their clifftop villages visited by researchers, curious travelers, and people seeking ancient wisdom. And the mystery deepened. How did they know? Let's explore the possibilities gently, without rushing to judgment, considering each explanation with an open mind and a critical eye. The most extraordinary explanation, and the one that captured popular imagination, is that the Dogon were visited by extraterrestrials from the Sirius system. These visitors, according to this theory, taught the Dogon about astronomy, agriculture, and civilization. The Nommo, the ancestral spirits in Dogon mythology, described as fish-like or amphibious beings who came from the sky in a spinning, whirling descent accompanied by fire and thunder, are actually memories of these alien visitors. Proponents of this theory point to the detailed accuracy of Dogon knowledge, the fact that they knew things they shouldn't have known, and the specificity of their descriptions. They suggest that such precise astronomical knowledge couldn't have come from naked eye observation or lucky guessing. This explanation is dramatic, appealing, and fits nicely with the ancient astronaut theories that became popular in the 1970s. It's also, almost certainly, not true. There's no physical evidence of extraterrestrial visitation to the Dogon or anywhere else on Earth. The descriptions of the Nommo, while vivid and specific, can be understood within the symbolic and mythological frameworks common to many cultures without requiring literal alien visitors. Moreover, the theory tends to diminish the Dogon themselves, treating them as passive recipients of knowledge rather than active observers and thinkers capable of their own discoveries. It's a form of cosmic colonialism, suggesting that African peoples couldn't have developed sophisticated knowledge on their own. A more mundane explanation is that the Dogon learned about Sirius B from European missionaries, travelers, or colonial administrators sometime in the early 20th century. After all, Sirius B was discovered in 1862, and by the time Griol arrived in the 1930s, this discovery had been part of astronomical knowledge for decades. It would have been mentioned in popular astronomy books, newspapers, and educational materials. This explanation has the advantage of simplicity. Information travels, even to remote villages. The Dogon had contact with the outside world through trade, through French colonial administration established in the late 19th century, through various visitors. Perhaps someone, a missionary teacher or a colonial administrator with an interest in astronomy, mentioned the discovery of Sirius B. The Dogon, being keen observers of the sky themselves, and already having Sirius as an important star in their cosmology, might have incorporated this new information into their existing framework. But there are problems with this explanation too. The Dogon's knowledge wasn't just a casual fact about a companion star. It was deeply integrated into their cosmology, their ritual calendar, their artistic symbolism, in ways that suggested long-standing tradition, not recent addition. They had specific ceremonies tied to the 50-year orbital period. The Siki ceremony, held every 60 years, close to the orbital period of Sirius B, is one of the most important and complex ceremonies in Dogon culture, involving the entire society over multiple years of preparation. Its celebration creates a new generational marker with the creation of large wooden masks that are then stored in special caves, creating a chronological record stretching back centuries. They had sand drawings, intricate diagrams traced on the ground during teaching sessions that illustrated the elliptical orbit. These weren't crude or approximate, but geometrically sophisticated, showing understanding of orbital mechanics. They had sacred masks representing the Sirius system, with specific symbolic elements for Sirius A, Sirius B, and even a hypothetical Sirius C. This level of integration suggests the knowledge was much older than the 20th century, or at least that it had been thoroughly incorporated into Dogon culture over a significant period. Moreover, Griol and Dieterlen, who spent years living with the Dogon and were initiated into secret societies, insisted that the knowledge they recorded came from ancient tradition, not recent borrowing. They were careful, scholarly observers, trained anthropologists aware of the methodological pitfalls of their field. A third possibility, perhaps the most intriguing, is that the Dogon discovered Sirius B through their own observations and reasoning, without telescopes, using methods we don't fully understand. This might sound impossible. How can you see an invisible star? But ancient peoples were extraordinary observers of the sky. They had no light pollution, no distractions from artificial entertainment. They spent countless hours watching the stars, not as a hobby, but as a practical necessity for agriculture, navigation, and calendrical purposes. and they passed down observations across generations, building up centuries of careful data. The Dogon knew, for instance, that planets don't twinkle like stars, that they move against the background of fixed stars, that they sometimes appear to go backward in their paths due to Earth's own motion. They knew about the phases of Venus, visible to the naked eye for those who know when and where to look. They had knowledge suggesting they understood that planets orbit the sun, not the Earth, a heliocentric model that wasn't widely accepted in Europe until after Copernicus. Some claim they knew about the rings of Saturn, or at least their oral traditions describe Saturn in ways that suggest knowledge of its unusual shape. They knew Jupiter has moons, though whether this was direct observation or inference isn't clear. Ancient peoples may have had better eyesight than we do, adapted to lives spent outdoors, using their vision for survival. There are historical accounts of individuals with exceptional vision who could see things invisible to most people. Some indigenous Australian groups can reportedly see the moons of Jupiter with the naked eye under perfect conditions. The eyesight of people who spend their entire lives outdoors, without books or screens to strain their near vision, can be remarkably acute. But more likely, if the Dogon discovered Sirius B independently, they used indirect observation and mathematical reasoning. They might have noticed perturbations in Sirius's motion across the sky, subtle wobbles that might indicate an unseen companion. Sirius does exhibit such motion, though detecting it requires very precise observation over many years. Over centuries of observation, perhaps spanning many generations of skywatchers passing down their data through oral tradition and sand drawings, they might have calculated the existence, orbital period, and characteristics of this invisible star using pure geometry, patient observation, and logical deduction. This would be an achievement equal to or exceeding that of European astronomers, just achieved through different methods over longer timescales without written records. This explanation gives the Dogon credit for scientific sophistication, for patience, for intellectual rigor. It respects their intelligence and observational skills while remaining within the bounds of natural explanation. But there's a fourth possibility, one that's less discussed, but perhaps most important for understanding what actually happened. Maybe we're asking the wrong question. Instead of asking, how did the Dogon know about Sirius B? We should ask, what do the Dogon stories about Sirius actually mean? And how much of what we think we know about Dogon astronomy is really theirs? Anthropologist Walter Van Beek, who also lived with and studied the Dogon in the 1980s and 90s, found that not all Dogon people knew about Sirius B. In fact, most didn't. The detailed astronomical knowledge Griol recorded came from a small group of initiated elders, priests, and cosmological specialists. Most Dogon, like most people everywhere, weren't particularly interested in or knowledgeable about astronomy beyond practical matters like planting seasons and the major constellations. Moreover, Van Beek suggested that Griol and Dieterlen, in their enthusiasm and their desire to record the full depth of Dogon cosmology, may have inadvertently influenced what they were told. Anthropological research always involves a complex interaction between researcher and subject. The presence of an outsider asking questions, showing intense interest in certain topics, can shape the answers given. The Dogon, like many people, tend to tell visitors what they think the visitors want to hear, especially when those visitors are powerful outsiders representing colonial authority. When French anthropologists showed intense interest in astronomical knowledge, when they asked leading questions or showed excitement at certain answers, Dogon elders may have elaborated, added details, or incorporated things they'd heard from Europeans into their traditional stories to please their guests, to seem more knowledgeable, or simply because the boundary between our knowledge and knowledge we learned from you had blurred. This doesn't mean the Dogon cosmology is fake or their knowledge trivial. It means that cultures are dynamic, always changing, always absorbing new influences while maintaining core traditions. The boundary between ancient tradition and recent addition is often blurry and contested even within the culture itself. What remains undeniably true is that the Dogon have a rich, sophisticated cosmology that treats Sirius as central and sacred. They have beautiful, complex myths about creation, about the Nommo bringing water and knowledge, about the structure of the universe and humanity's place within it. Whether every detail about Sirius B was ancient knowledge or partly influenced by 20th century astronomy doesn't diminish the depth and beauty of their worldview. Let's pause here and simply rest with the image. A clear African night, the Milky Way, like a river of light overhead, stars brilliant and uncountable. No electric lights anywhere, just the glow of cooking fires in the village below the cliff. The air still warm from the day's heat, but cooling now, carrying the scent of wood smoke and earth. Elders sitting on a rooftop or gathered in a courtyard, teaching young initiates the sacred knowledge. One elder points up at Sirius blazing low on the horizon, brighter than anything else in the sky, and begins the story. His voice is quiet, but carries in the stillness, a rhythm like a chant, like poetry. He traces patterns in the sand with a stick, showing the orbit of the invisible companion, showing how everything moves in cycles, how the universe is balanced through complementary pairs, how what happens in the sky mirrors what happens on Earth and in the human heart. The young men listen, memorizing, asking questions that will be answered in time, knowing that this knowledge will be passed to them gradually, layer by layer, as they prove themselves ready. This is not book learning, but embodied knowledge, information inseparable from its context, from the rituals, from the lived experience of being Dogon. Whether that knowledge is thousands of years old or hundreds, whether it came from patient observation or from bits of conversation with French visitors woven into traditional stories, doesn't really matter in this moment. What matters is the act of transmission, the passing of wisdom from one generation to the next, the connection being maintained between earth and sky, between past and future. The Dogon cosmology is complex and layered, with multiple levels of meaning accessible at different stages of initiation. Let's explore it gently, not as a puzzle to solve, but as a story to appreciate, as a window into a different way of understanding the universe. At the beginning, there was Amma, the creator god, described as a spinning vortex, a whirling energy that set everything in motion. This description is interesting because it resonates with modern physics' understanding of the universe's origins. The quantum fluctuations, the spinning particles, the fundamental role of rotation and spiral motion in cosmology. Of course, the Dogon weren't doing quantum physics, but their philosophical intuition that creation involves spiral motion and vibration is surprisingly compatible with modern scientific understanding. Amma created the universe through a process of vibration and spiral motion. He spoke, and from his words came vibration, and from vibration came matter and energy. First, Amma created the stars, scattering them across the void. Then the earth, shaping it like a woman lying on her back, with the clitoris as an anthill. But this first earth was lonely, incomplete. Amma became intimate with the earth to create life, but this union was problematic. The anthill, representing the feminine principle in its wild, uncultivated form, disrupted the act of creation. From this imperfect union arose Yurugu, a trickster spirit, a fox-like being representing disorder, impatience, the desire to create without proper preparation. Yurugu is the disruptive force in creation, the principle of chaos and selfishness that exists alongside order and cooperation. To restore balance, Amma tried again, this time creating the Nommo in proper fashion. The Nommo were born as twins, representing harmony, duality, and completeness. In Dogon philosophy, twinness is the ideal state, representing balance between complementary opposites. The Nommo embody this principle perfectly. The Nommo are described as part fish, part human, associated with water, with wisdom, with civilization. They're sometimes depicted as serpent-like or as having human upper bodies and fish-like lower bodies. They represent the life-giving power of water in a landscape where water is precious and scarce. The Nommo descended to Earth from the sky, specifically from the region of Sirius, in a spinning arc that created a great whirlwind and thunder as it descended. This arc, described in Dogon stories, had multiple levels and contained all the things necessary for human civilization: seeds of plants, models of animals, tools, and knowledge. When the Nommo landed, they brought water, transforming the dry earth. They taught humanity agriculture, showing people how to plant millet and tend crops. They taught weaving, the transformation of cotton into thread and thread into cloth. They taught smithing, the transformation of stone into metal and metal into tools. They established the calendar, showing people how to track time through the stars. They also established the patterns of society, the rules and taboos that keep communities in balance. They taught the importance of twins, of balanced pairs, of cooperation. They showed humans how to organize into families and clans, how to govern themselves, how to resolve conflicts. When the Nommo had finished their work, when they had set humanity on the right path, they returned to the sky, back to Sirius. But they didn't leave entirely. They remain present in water wherever it's found. Every spring, every well, every raindrop contains something of the Nommo. They're present in the life-giving moisture that makes the desert bloom, in the rain that comes at the right season, in the dew that forms on plants in the early morning. In Dogon art and ritual, the Nommo are represented in masks and sculptures, often with stylized features. The masks used in ceremonies aren't realistic portraits, but symbolic representations, encoded with meanings that initiates learn to read. The great serpent mask, sometimes 30 feet long or more, represents the Nommo in their aspect as water spirits undulating through the village during ceremonies like a wave, like a river, bringing blessings. The Sigui ceremony, held every 60 years, is the most important ceremony in Dogon culture. It celebrates the regeneration of the world, the death and rebirth of generations. The ceremony is complex, lasting several years in total, with different phases of preparation, celebration, and conclusion. During the main ceremony, special masks are carved from sacred wood, painted with specific patterns, and brought out in massive processions involving entire villages. These masks, after the ceremony, are stored in special caves where they accumulate over centuries, creating a chronological record of Dogon history. By counting the masks in these caves, researchers can date the Sigi ceremonies back several hundred years, confirming that the tradition is ancient, not recently invented. The 60-year cycle is close to the 50-year orbital period of Sirius B, though not exactly matching. Some suggest this small discrepancy disproves the connection, Others argue that the ritual cycle and astronomical cycle don't need to match perfectly, that the 60-year period might be based on human generations, approximately 3 20-year generations, while still being cosmologically connected to Sirius. The Dogon cosmology includes detailed knowledge of the Sirius system beyond just the existence of Sirius B. They describe the orbit as elliptical, which is correct. They say Sirius B is extremely heavy and dense, which is correct. They even describe it as being made of sagala, a special substance that is the heaviest thing in existence, a description that matches the nature of white dwarf matter, where electrons are stripped from atoms and matter is compressed to densities impossible under normal conditions. Some Dogon traditions also speak of Sirius C, a third star in the system. Modern astronomy hasn't confirmed the existence of Sirius C, though it hasn't ruled it out either. Some orbital irregularities in the Sirius system have led astronomers to speculate about a third body, but nothing definitive has been found. If Sirius C does exist, it would be much smaller and fainter than Sirius B, even harder to detect. Whether the Dogon's mention of it represents ancient knowledge, lucky speculation, or later addition to the tradition is impossible to say. The Dogon also have knowledge of other astronomical phenomena. They know the Earth rotates on its axis, causing the apparent motion of stars across the sky. They know the Earth is spherical, not flat. They know the moon is dry and dead, without water, while Earth is alive with moisture and life. They describe the moon's phases accurately and understand that the moon's light is reflected sunlight, not its own light. They know that planets orbit the sun, not the Earth. Placing their cosmology in the heliocentric camp centuries before this model became standard in European astronomy. They can identify the planets visible to the naked eye and distinguish them from stars based on their movement and their lack of twinkling. They have detailed knowledge of star clusters, particularly the Pleiades, which they call the stars of the ancestors. They track these throughout the year and use them as agricultural markers. They understand that some stars are actually clusters of many stars too close together to distinguish individually without aid. All of this astronomical knowledge is woven into a broader cosmological framework where the universe is understood as built on balanced pairs of opposites, male and female, day and night, wet and dry, life and death, order and chaos. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything has its complement, its partner, its twin. This philosophy of balanced duality extends to social organization. Dogon society is divided into complementary groups and roles. There are farmers and blacksmiths, each essential, each with their sacred role. There are women and men, each with their domains and responsibilities, ideally in balance. There are different clans, traced through patrilineal and matrilineal lines, creating a web of relationships that binds the society together. The stars are not just distant lights, but active participants in this cosmic dance. They influence events on Earth, not in a deterministic astrological sense, but in a more subtle way, as part of the overall pattern. The rising of Sirius marks the beginning of the agricultural year. Certain ceremonies must be performed when specific stars are visible. The positions of planets can be auspicious or inauspicious for certain activities. This cosmology is not static, but dynamic. It's enacted, performed, lived through daily practice and annual ceremonies. It's not just believed, but embodied, woven into the fabric of life. When a Dogon farmer plants his millet, he's not just putting seeds in the ground. He's participating in the creative act of Amma, partnering with the Nommo, maintaining the cosmic order. When a Dogon weaver creates cloth, the act of weaving of taking individual threads and creating a coherent whole, mirrors the creation of the universe from disparate elements. The loom itself is a cosmological diagram, the warp threads representing one principle, the weft threads representing its complement, coming together to create something new and useful. When masks dance during ceremonies, they're not performing for entertainment. They're embodying the spirits they represent, making the invisible visible, bringing the cosmic principles down to earth where humans can interact with them, receive their blessings, learn from their wisdom. Is all this knowledge ancient? Did it all come from extraterrestrials? Was it borrowed from Europeans? Or did it emerge from the Dogon's own observations and philosophical reflections developed over many generations? The truth is probably a mixture, a bricolage, a creative synthesis. Cultures are always hybrid, always incorporating influences from many sources while maintaining their distinct character. The Dogon cosmology likely includes ancient observations passed down through generations, philosophical insights developed by particularly brilliant individuals over centuries, elements borrowed or overheard from travelers and missionaries and incorporated into existing frameworks, and creative elaborations by priests and artists who saw connections between traditional stories and new information. This doesn't make it less valuable or less real. Culture is always a work in progress, always being created and recreated by each generation. The question isn't whether Dogon cosmology is pure or authentic in some impossible sense, but whether it's meaningful, whether it serves its purpose of helping the Dogon understand their world and their place in it. And clearly, it does. The Dogon cosmology provides a framework for understanding everything from agriculture to social relationships, to ethics, to the meaning of life and death. It connects the smallest activities of daily life to the grandest motions of the cosmos. It gives people a sense of place, of purpose, of connection to something larger than themselves. What we can say with certainty is that the Dogon took the stars seriously. They watched the sky with care and reverence. They built a civilization around agricultural cycles tied to celestial events. They created art and ritual that honored the connection between earth and sky. And whether every detail of their astronomical knowledge is ancient or not, their cosmology is sophisticated, beautiful, and worthy of respect. In recent decades, the Dogon themselves have had to navigate the fame and attention their mystery has brought them. Tourists come seeking ancient wisdom, sometimes with unrealistic expectations, treating the Dogon as living museum pieces rather than contemporary people. Researchers arrive asking questions, sometimes respectfully, sometimes intrusively. Film crews want to document their ceremonies, which can be disruptive and disrespectful of sacred protocols. Some Dogon have embraced this attention, becoming cultural guides and interpreters, opening their villages to visitors, sharing their traditions with the world. They've recognized that tourism can provide income in a harsh economic environment, that sharing their culture can be a way of ensuring its preservation and transmission. Others have withdrawn, concerned that sacred knowledge is being commodified, that the depth of their traditions is being reduced to sound bites and simplified explanations for outsiders who don't have the context or commitment to truly understand. They worry that initiations are being rushed, that young people are being initiated prematurely to perform for tourists, that the sacred masks and rituals are being treated as entertainment rather than as serious spiritual practice. There's also the uncomfortable reality of Western fascination with exotic knowledge, the tendency to romanticize and exoticize African cultures. This fascination, while often well-intentioned, can be patronizing. It can treat African peoples as somehow more mystical, more primitive, more authentically spiritual than modern people, freezing them in an imagined, timeless past, rather than seeing them as they are. Living, changing, contemporary human beings, dealing with the same challenges of modernity as everyone else. The Dogon are not relics of an ancient past, preserved unchanged into the present. They're contemporary people, facing drought and climate change that threatens their agricultural way of life, dealing with political instability in Mali, managing the challenges of education and youth migration to cities, navigating tensions between tradition and modernity, between Islam and traditional beliefs, between local identity and national citizenship. They use cell phones, watch television when they have electricity, send their children to schools where they learn French and mathematics alongside Dogon language and traditions. They participate in national politics, in regional trade, in the global economy. They're as modern as anyone, while also maintaining connections to traditions that stretch back centuries. So what should we take from the Dogon's knowledge of Sirius? Perhaps the lesson is humility. Humility about assuming that sophisticated knowledge can only come from Western science or from extraterrestrial intervention. Humility about recognizing that humans everywhere, in all times, have looked up at the sky and tried to understand what they saw, often with remarkable success. Humility about acknowledging that there may be ways of knowing that we've lost or never developed, observation skills and memory techniques, and ways of passing down knowledge that don't rely on writing, but are no less valid. Perhaps the lesson is connection. The Dogon don't see themselves as separate from the cosmos. They're part of it, connected through invisible threads to the stars overhead, to the cycles of the seasons, to the patterns that repeat at every scale from the microscopic to the cosmic. Their cosmology isn't just intellectual knowledge, it's lived experience, enacted through ritual and art and daily practice. Perhaps the lesson is patience. The Dogon built their knowledge over generations, watching, recording in ways that didn't require writing, passing down observations from elders to initiates through oral tradition, through sand drawings, through embodied rituals. They didn't rush to conclusions. They allowed patterns to emerge slowly, trusting that understanding would come in time, that the universe would reveal itself to those who watched with care and reverence. As you lie here now, feeling your body grow heavy and relaxed, your breathing slow and deep, imagine yourself in a Dogon village at night. The day's heat has finally faded. A gentle breeze carries the scent of millet and wood smoke. Somewhere in the village, drums are playing softly, a slow, steady rhythm like a heartbeat, like the pulse of the earth itself. You're sitting on a clay rooftop with the elders, the clay still warm beneath you from the absorbed heat of the day. The sky is darkening, deepening from blue to indigo to black, and as the light fades, the stars emerge, first one by one, then in clusters, then in vast rivers and pools of light. Above, the sky is a bowl of stars, so many stars, more stars than you've ever seen, their light undiminished by any artificial glow. The Milky Way arches overhead, a river of light so dense it casts shadows. And there, low on the horizon, rising as the last light fades, brighter than anything else in the sky, Sirius blazes like a diamond, like a beacon, like a door to mysteries. An elder sits beside you and points to it with a staff worn smooth by generations of hands. He begins to tell the story, not in words you understand intellectually with your thinking mind, but in a language that bypasses analysis and speaks directly to something deeper in you, something that remembers, that knows, that connects. A story about water in a dry land, about wisdom that came from the sky, about beings who taught and then departed, but remain present in every drop of rain, every spring, every dew-covered leaf in the morning, about cycles and spirals and the dance of creation that continues forever, never beginning, never ending, just going on and on like the drums, like your heartbeat, like the spin of the stars overhead. You don't need to understand every detail of the story. You don't need to know if it's literally true or metaphorically true, or some mixture of both that transcends those categories. You don't need to solve the mystery or explain the impossible knowledge. You just need to be here, to feel the connection, to sense that you and that bright star are part of the same fabric, woven together by forces older than memory, deeper than thought. The drums continue their steady rhythm, never rushing, never hesitating. The fire crackles softly. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient paths, moving so slowly you can't see the motion, but you know it's there. You can feel it, the great cosmic dance that includes everything from the smallest grain of sand to the brightest star. And you are part of it. Not an observer looking at the universe from outside, but a participant, a thread in the great weaving, a note in the eternal song, a drop in the infinite ocean of existence. Let yourself rest in that knowledge now. Let go of questions and doubts and the need to explain or understand everything. Let go of the separation between you and the stars, between past and present, between knowledge and mystery. Just be here, under these stars, part of this ancient moment that is also always new, always now, always offering itself freely to those willing to receive. The Dogon know something essential that we've often forgotten in our rush toward technological understanding and material mastery. They know that the universe is not just something to be analyzed and measured and controlled, but something to be honored and celebrated and lived in relationship with. They know that we're not separate from nature, but part of it, not observers of the cosmos, but expressions of it. Their knowledge of Sirius, whether ancient or modern, whether discovered through patient observation or learned from Europeans or gifted by mysterious visitors, is ultimately less important than their attitude toward the stars. They look up with reverence. They tell stories that connect heaven and earth, past and future, the individual and the infinite. They live their lives in harmony with celestial cycles. They remember, in a way we've forgotten, that we are all children of the stars, made of stardust, connected to everything. So as you drift towards sleep now, carry that with you. The sense of connection to something vast and beautiful. The patient watching of those who came before. The stories passed down through countless generations, changing and adapting, but preserving something essential. The knowledge that somewhere in Africa, under the same stars that shine through your window, people are still drumming, still dancing, still honoring the ancient patterns that connect us all to the cosmos and to each other. And Sirius, the dog star, brightest light in the night sky, continues its eternal dance with its invisible companion, spinning together in the darkness, bound by invisible forces, just as they've done for millions of years and will do for millions more, watched over by those who remember to look up with wonder, with patience, with the knowing that some mysteries are meant to be lived with rather than solved. If you're still awake, you're welcome to continue exploring other mysteries. But if sleep is calling, and it is, answer it now. Let yourself sink into rest, held by the earth beneath you, watched over by the stars above, connected to the great web of existence that includes everything and excludes nothing. And remember to subscribe, like this video, and share your city in the comments so we can continue these gentle journeys together, discovering the stories that connect us all, one sleepy soul at a time. Good night. May your dreams be filled with starlight and ancient wisdom, with the patient watching of those who came before, with drums that beat like heartbeats, with the quiet knowledge that we are never truly alone under these vast and beautiful skies, that we are part of something larger, something timeless, something that continues to dance and sing and shine long after we close our eyes and drift into sleep.